I already know what you're going to say. Man, this guy can't be happy about anything. Well, why aren't you being thankful that they're finally calling out LeBron James? What I am being is consistent. I talk about accountability on here a lot. I'm not letting these guys off the hook because they decided to finally kind of do their jobs when it looks like it's easier to finally tell the truth. Whether this is legitimately fatigue or whether they're just getting braver because the circumstances have changed, neither one of those is the right reason to finally start saying what you should have already been saying. I started this episode a couple of weeks ago when people were first starting to show signs of LeBron James fatigue, like finally having the balls to slightly criticize him. And I just didn't finish them. Other people were covering the topic pretty well, and maybe I'm having my own fatigue. I think I need to take a little bit of time off, deal with things in my personal life that I put on the shelf to edit all these videos, and then come back strong later. And that's what I am a little bit concerned or anticipating is going to happen with these people that are supposedly done with LeBron James. Come October, we're going to be right back to the same old script. But instead of focusing on LeBron's accountability, I'm going to focus on the accountability of these people who are now criticizing LeBron James. And it's barely criticism. You know, it's lightly touching on topics that are undeniably true. And people are finally sort of mentioning them. And this is getting categorized as LeBron hate. That tells you how protected the guy is. But my problem is people whose job it is to report on the game and break down the game and analyze the game and do color commentary during the games have kept their mouths shut for this long. I'm not going to give them credit for opening their mouths now when I guess it's getting safer to do it or whatever. You know, how much money do you guys need? How much money do you guys need if you're willing to lie on television for years and years and years because of whatever this unspoken rule is? I mean, the unspoken rule about not criticizing LeBron James is being brought to light when all of these shows are talking about how people have kept their mouths shut because they're worried about the repercussions. I mean, that tells you enough right there. Look, life is full of tough decisions and consequences. If you're a guy who says, okay, if you tell me that I can't tell the truth on television because of these rules in place to protect a player, that's fine. I'll take the paycheck. Or, well, sorry, that's not how this is supposed to go down. You can take this contract and shove it, and I'll go on a podcast and reveal what you're doing. Speaking of podcasts, is JJ Redick, when he becomes a coach, gonna give up his podcasting? Like, I think it's bad enough that players are podcasting while they're playing. Are we going to now have a coach who, between games, goes and on his platform gives his version of what went down and manipulates people's minds about the reffing? And if he's, coaching for LeBron James, he'll be providing excuses for what went down on a game-by-game basis. Oh, man, that's where we are. That's where we have reached in the NBA. You have an actual danger of a coach podcast. Also on the topic of podcasts, they had Draymond Green on during halftime last night, and they had Draymond Green commercials showing throughout the game. This is how someone who behaves horribly and has been suspended multiple times and should have been suspended even more times. This is how you treat someone like that, by rewarding him. Don't invite him on. Don't invite that piece of trash on after he has set bad example after bad example after bad example. I mean, what's your real message? Screw your suspensions. That's hollow criticism. That's a hollow punishment when at the same time you invite him onto your show to talk and give his opinion on things. What's that piece of trash have endorsements for anyway? He's a glorified role player whom you wouldn't even know existed if he wasn't on the Warriors. Look what the Warriors have done for people over the years. Andrew Wiggins didn't become an all-star until he came to the Warriors. Jordan Poole was the next greatest thing while he was on the Warriors. Now what? Now what do people think about him? So Draymond Green, you would not even exist. You hear about Clutch Sports messaging people and saying, hey, you should consider LeBron James for the MVP. And I can also picture Clutch Sports calling into these networks and saying, hey, you need to get my boy on for a little special guest appearance. Promote his brand, promote his name. I don't understand why you would invite Draymond Green on above other people. You know, his team's doing poorly. His behavior's been terrible. You don't have other people in the league that you could have on as a guest? And all the commercials, all the Draymond Green commercials. Oh, God. And how many times they show them. In fact, let's just really talk quickly about TNT no longer having the NBA contract. Well, is this not a sign of the viewership problem? It clearly just wasn't worth it for TNT anymore. And you could see signs of this while you're watching all year, especially if you're watching on the streaming apps, which I'm guessing most people do, or close to most people do now, instead of standard cable, traditional cable. You see the same ads repeated so often that you got to think, wow, they must not have very many other people competing for ad spots. And sometimes you just have the filler screen. It's like, thanks for watching. The program will return soon. You're filling up airtime with that. There were your first signs that there was a problem. Okay, geez. Went on a little side rant there. Let's get back to the topic at hand. I guess I'll incorporate my original recordings from the last couple of weeks at the end or something. But let's start with the Reggie Miller thing. And let's also talk about Chris Broussard and Paul Pierce. So if this was indeed a shot at LeBron James, it was passive. He didn't say LeBron's name, and he left it open to interpretation. Paul Pierce jumped on that opening to try and say, oh, they might be talking about Curry or KD. Listen, everyone knows that. Listen, when everybody knows who you're talking about without saying it, then you need to look at that guy's career and behavior and ask why it's so obvious who he's talking about. And the attempt to put KD and Steph in there, like, what do you got? A tiny little bit of evidence to put those guys in the same category? Actually, I don't know how Steph fits into that at all. KD's gotten just general criticism, but not any clear accusations that he got Vogel fired. But because KD's jumped around on some teams and stuff, and there have been some coach firings, then he is lumped into that category. Maybe he's responsible, maybe he isn't, but it's nowhere near, however guilty KD is, he's nowhere near the category of LeBron James. So to pretend that Reggie Miller was talking about KD and not LeBron is quite a reach. They also mentioned on their podcast that it was going around that Reggie Miller had done this in order to protect Michael Jordan's legacy by taking a shot at LeBron James. Wow, let's put this into perspective. Reggie Miller's entire broadcasting career has been based on sucking LeBron James's dick. He gives LeBron James 900 compliments per game. Per game. Lifting LeBron James. Improving the image of LeBron James in the minds of the weak-minded watching at home. All the while, different media sources are taking shots at Michael Jordan, a retired man who's keeping his mouth shut through all of this. But Reggie Miller sort of, kind of, maybe talks about something that is, by the way, an undeniable truth. An undeniable truth. And this is bashing LeBron James. He didn't even have the balls to call him out by name. And it's, like I said, it's undeniable. We're talking about the fatigue. We're talking about the fatigue that the viewers have. We're talking about the fatigue that the broadcasters and the analysts have. It is refreshing to hear Anthony Edwards take accountability. It is refreshing to hear someone act like a young, mature man. It is refreshing. No matter who we're talking about, the league is in such shambles. Society is in such shambles that hearing this behavior is a breath of fresh air. Period. And who might Reggie be referring to? He could be referring to multiple people, but there is someone who stands out more than the others. I mean, LeBron James has always had excuses. He's always had scapegoats. And the closest thing to him taking accountability is when he sort of kind of admits, yeah, I didn't play very well at the time, but look at all the disadvantages I had because my teammates were shit. I mean, even when he's admitting that he played like shit, he has to throw other people in there so he doesn't. I mean, even when it's supposed to be a moment of humility, he can't even stick with that script. Look, LeBron James's behavior is so shady that when talk shows analyze him showing up to the Cavs game, and some people are like, oh, leave him alone. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go to a Cavs game. And other people are like, well, it's a calculated move. You can't deny that most of what LeBron James does is calculating and manipulative. The idea that he might be trying to send a message. You can't deny that that's what he does. The chances that it was an innocent thing, while, hey, going to a game and sitting courtside when you have ridiculous amounts of money to blow, sure, I would do it. But you also can't deny his tendencies. And why was Rich Paul with him? Gross. Crowning yourself? Why's he got to crown himself? Gross. So accountability. If LeBron James does, in fact, make a move to go to Cleveland as part of his script for ending his career, which I've actually thought he might do for quite some time, it was either that or hit another major spot like New York. I would like Donovan Mitchell to have the integrity to, instead of having his career destroyed, carry LeBron James into the playoffs and get no credit for it. I would like to see Donovan Mitchell say, I'm leaving, even if he has to take less money somewhere else. Darius Garland too. And I like Jarrett Allen. I don't want Jarrett Allen to have to play with LeBron James just because of the miserable experience that it is. Forget what Jarrett Allen's legacy is going to be or how people will remember him. He's probably not going to be that remembered, but I don't want him to suffer through LeBron James. The bulk of the rest of my criticism for the other people who have spoken out regarding this revolves around, how are you just now seeing it? Why are you bringing it up now? A lot of them, in their rants about LeBron James, and by the way, this all seems to have been unleashed due to Darvin Ham being fired, they all went down a list of LeBron's history. So if you know LeBron's history, then you know that this isn't new. But y'all have had your mouths shut. So don't act glorified now. Don't act like you're righteous now. And why was Darvin Ham? Why was that the straw that broke the camel's back? I mean, a lot of coaches have fallen to the wayside. You know, Stephen A. Smith can't stop talking about as a black man. I would like to think that this isn't just because Darvin Ham was a black coach. I would really like to think that that's not the reason. Let's see who. And it's probably not. Maybe everybody just likes Darvin Ham more than others, or maybe it's the LeBron fatigue. So let's see. We had Paul Silas. Paul Silas is black, but was he too early on in LeBron's career for people to realize the pattern of LeBron James? Brendan Malone was not black, but again, he was just an interim coach until Mike Brown stepped in. Mike Brown was let go. That doesn't seem like it was a very cool move. Again, still early in LeBron's career, so maybe people didn't realize that he was a coach killer yet. He tried to have Spoelstra fired. David Blatt was let go. Tyronn Lue survived, barely. Luke Walton, I don't know if that was because of James or if the timing was just a coincidence. And then, of course, Vogel, and now Darvin Ham. All right, I'll go ahead and insert my old recordings, the original recordings on this topic. I will add one thing, because I know I scolded Skip Bayless for, predictably, and once again talking about LeBron's intelligence. Well, he did it again. He did it again regarding going to the Cavs game and say he has the highest IQ and everything he does is calculated. Listen, being manipulative is different than being intelligent. A lot of people can be manipulative. That's a behavior. That's not a sign of intelligence. That is a lack of integrity. That is someone who is willing to treat other people poorly for their own gain. Now, yes, calculating how to manipulate people requires some thinking, but it doesn't take high intelligence thinking. It just requires the type of brain that's willing to think that way. So again, Skip, shut up with the IQ shit. I don't really like Stephen A. Smith, but most of what he had to say in this episode on his own show was pretty good. But the problem I have with it is, why now? Why are you getting brave now? You just now can see these things? Because he's listing things from the past. He's listing things about LeBron's career that have always been clear and evident. So now when things are getting a little bit rough, possibly, for LeBron James, now suddenly you have clairvoyance. Yeah, I'm not buying it. Why weren't you saying these things as they were happening? And he couldn't help himself. He's got to talk about as a black man stuff. And as it pertains to Darvin Ham. And when he says it, then I'm like, wait a minute. So is this the only reason that you're mad? You didn't notice any of the shit that LeBron James did before until a black coach that you liked got fired? Either, and not saying that I agree with the firing of Darvin Ham, but your job is to be aware of these things as they're happening, no matter what the circumstances are. I get a little uncomfortable talking about race because it's so easy to piss people off one direction or the other. So let me just say that if Stephen A. Smith hadn't mentioned it, it wouldn't have popped into my head. Like, that's when I started thinking, oh, is that the real reason? If that's not the reason, then don't mention it. And if it is the reason, have a full-blown argument filled with evidence to back it up. Otherwise, shut up, because you just planted this idea. Skip Bayless. I actually don't listen to Skip Bayless. I didn't know that he had a whole nother show. I guess I should have assumed everybody does. But for the first time, YouTube recommended it to me, even though LeBron supporters accuse me of just being another Skip Bayless. Anyone that criticizes LeBron James is a hater or a Skip Bayless. I got to tell you, Skip Bayless is kind of a cowardly hater. He was a little bit braver in this one. But again, I'm like, okay, where was this? Skip has gotten pretty soft in recent years, especially on his own shows like Undisputed. And he continues to do this thing that he's been doing the last like 4 or 5 years, calling LeBron the smartest NBA player without backing it up with any evidence. So even as a hater is criticizing LeBron James, he can't stop complimenting him. And if it were true, that'd be one thing, but it's always just a general statement. He was doing this with the passing too, claiming he was the best passer. It's not cool. It's not cool because it's not true. I'll tell you one difference between me being a Skip Bayless and the actual Skip Bayless. I wouldn't just sit there and let Shannon Sharp yell over the top of me every time I'm making a good point. I'm not talking about a physical fight, but Skip just like allowed himself to get abused anytime. And Shannon Sharp acts just like actual LeBron fanboys. When the going gets tough, when you can't win an argument, you just start yelling. You just get in your emotions. I'm not a big fan of all of these Monday morning quarterbacks, all these people who have suddenly awakened to the LeBron James effect. You know, it was only a couple of weeks ago that the LeBron James effect was a positive thing. Now everybody's awake. It's interesting how that like switched. The first person I heard was Stephen A, and I already commented on him. And then Kendrick Perkins, and I'm hearing Colin Cowherd and Rick Bucher, whatever his name is. And you guys couldn't see this before? I don't like it. You're professional sports analysts. This isn't new. The negative effect that LeBron has had on the teams is not new. I don't like you jumping on the bandwagon. As much as I like the critique, or that it's at least happening, I don't like these guys jumping on a bandwagon. Where was the bravery? Where were you calling it out as it was happening? Because it's not just that you bit your tongue due to a script, a paycheck, whatever you want to call it. You also caused damage. You also placed false ideas in the minds of people at home. I've talked about this on the Sunday live streams about how when people at home are seeing, they're witnessing bad behavior, questionable behavior, bad role models, but the announcers are excusing it or dancing around it or choose not to mention it. That is damaging. That's at least as damaging as the guy who's actually doing it. I had a recording about Wilbon. As much as I liked some of what he said, there were still a lot of problems with what he said. Anyway, I can't find it, and you get the point by now. I'm going on, but there you have it. There is my Tuesday morning rant on accountability. Thanks for listening.